Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1397B, and today's date is October 10th, 2017, and the title of the episode is Russia Calls Out the U.S. for Simulating Fighting in Syria and Iraq. Let's get into the economic collapse, political, and geopolitical news. Now, as we know, Catalonia had a referendum, and they voted to be independent. They wanted to be separated from Spain. And the Catalan Parliament met this afternoon, and the Catalonian President asked Parliament to suspend the effects of Catalonia voting yes for independence to hold talks with Spain. However, the President still maintains the legality of the October 1st referendum in Catalonia, stating that Catalans had won the right to become an independent country. For now, he seeks dialogue with Madrid. Now, the Spanish government, they still might take measures where they might apply Article 155 of the Constitution. That is the nuclear option, one which would entail Spain seizing control of Catalonia, potentially leading to violence and maybe a civil war. So it looks like the president of Catalonia wants to speak to Madrid, so they don't have this type of violence moving forward. And the people, if they don't get their independence, they're going to be very, very upset because they voted for this. But it looks like they're trying to calm the situation down before maybe civil war breaks out. So we're going to have to watch this very carefully to see what is happening. Now, what's very interesting is that other countries around the world have looked at Catalonia and looked at the referendum, how they voted for independence. And this is triggering other countries across Europe to do the same. On the Finnish archipelago of Åland, these are the islands off of Finnish, we can see the controversial referendum has evoked hopes of widening the autonomy the islanders currently enjoy with more ambitious goals to follow. So a lot more countries are going to be looking at this saying, maybe we don't need to be a part of the main country. Maybe we can have our own peace and we don't have to be a part anymore. And this might spread. Now, this is completely the opposite of what the globalists want. The globalists don't want more countries to be independent. They want more countries to be one and the same. This is why they spread the refugees out through all these nations to try to blend everyone together. And if we have more and more countries popping up, this is going to be a lot more difficult for them. And we can see right now the globalists, their whole entire goal, well, at this point, it's not going anywhere. We see Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov is meeting with U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, and they're discussing many different issues, but one of them that they're discussing is how the U.S. illegally seized the property of Russia. And they're saying, listen, we want this returned, and they're warning of legal consequences and possible retaliation if this is not done. So we can see right now that Russia is not very happy that they illegally seized this. And remember, they seized this because of this Russia cyber attack on the elections, about Russian collusion, and all of it turned out to be fake, phony, and false. Now, the BBC is out there, and they're saying that North Korean hackers have reportedly stolen a large cache of military documents from South Korea, including a plan to assassinate North Korea's leader, Kim Jong-un. Now, of course, why would North Korea come out and say, listen, we got this information, we're the ones who hacked, we stole the information? This kind of doesn't make sense, because if they wanted to do it again, if they actually really did it, they just blew their cover. And again, why is it coming out of the BBC? Where did they get this information? Of course, anonymous sources. They really don't say. Actually, they're saying it came from South Korea. Now, South Korea, their news agency, which is run by the corporate media, by the cabal, they report on a lot of different things, which never turns out to be true. And we can see right now, it looks like they're trying to push their agenda, saying that North Korea is now hacking into South Korea. And they're trying to push something. Now, it looks like the U.S. forces, they're preparing to join the South Korean partners for yet another round of military exercises that North Korea leader Kim Jong-un is so fond of. The U.S. has sent a nuclear-powered sub to participate. The nuclear-powered submarine Michigan will arrive in the Korean port city of Busan. And we can see right now that the USS Ronald Reagan is no longer really near the Korean peninsula right now. It is in Hong Kong. It is docked there right now. And they're expecting that it will go back to the Korean peninsula. But we see that the corporate media is out there saying that, all these aircraft carriers are there. They're, right near North Korea, but they really aren't. They're coming and going. They're participating in the drill to provoke North Korea, and then most of them just leave. They go for refueling in Hong Kong, they go to Japan, they might come back, and we can see this happening all the time. It's not like all these ships are sitting outside of North Korea getting ready to bomb them. It's not happening that way. We see Erdogan right now. Well, it looks like he's speaking with Serbia, and it looks like they want to team up with the Turkish Stream pipeline. They want the pipeline extended to Serbia. They want it to go up into Europe. We see that Turkey, Russia, they want to supply Europe with natural gas. Now, this is something the cabal has been trying to stop because they really wanted a pipeline going from Qatar through Syria into Europe, and this is why the actual war in Syria started, because Assad said no, because Assad wanted to deal with Iran, and they wanted Iran to run a pipeline through Syria. So what's happening right now is Iran made a deal with Iraq. Iraq is working with Syria, and it looks like there's going to be a pipeline going from Iran to Iraq to Syria, and it's going to be going into Europe. We see there's a pipeline going from Turkey, coming from Russia into Turkey, then going up through into Europe. And it looks like whatever the cabal's plan was to stop all of this, it's not happening right now. Now, it looks like out in Libya, there were some murders of tribal peacekeepers. Now, there's different tribes out there trying to get control of the country. And of course, we have the unified government that was created by the U.S., the UN. The people didn't vote for this. And it looks like some of the tribal peacekeepers, 4 of them, well, they were murdered. Now, they're saying this was a crime. They identified the perpetrator. But it looks like this might have been a hit where they're trying to get rid of all these other tribes so they can take control of Libya. Remember, NATO just said they would like to go back into Libya to stop Russia, because Russia has been working with all the tribes to create some type of peace in the area. Now, Russia, their air force, they have destroyed the Islamic State economic infrastructure. They no longer have sources of financing in Syria for purchasing weapons, ammunition, recruiting mercenaries, and they are completely beaten at this time. They can't steal oil anymore. They're losing land like crazy, and it looks like they are almost done. Now, Russia, they are becoming a lot more brave in announcing what's really going on in Syria and in Iraq, because they do have the upper hand with Syria right now, and they're calling out the United States and the coalition forces, saying that they've been simulating attacking the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, and they pretended to attack certain areas to allow the Islamic State to move into other areas. And we've been talking about this for a very long time, where there's been a lot of fake bombing, a lot of fake, attacking of the Islamic State, because we know the Islamic State is part of the cabal. Now Russia is out there pointing out that, yes, these were simulated attacks. They're saying that the U.S.-led strikes against the Islamic State targets in Iraq has sharply decreased as Syrian forces close in on the Islamic State positions in Deir ez-Zor, and this was to allow the Islamic State to move in different areas. And they've noticed these patterns over and over and over. And in some cases, the U.S.-led planes reduced their daily intensity of attacks on the Islamic State targets in Iraq by 5 times compared to the engagement in Syria. So it looks like what they wanted to do was to allow the Islamic State to move to different areas. So they let up in this area. They hit another area to pretend that they were fighting the Islamic State to make it still look good and allow them to flow into Syria or back into Iraq, depending on what the circumstances were. So we see right now that once again, we are seeing that the truth is starting to flow out. And the reason why the truth is starting to flow out is because the cabal is losing power. They don't have the same power they once had, because we can see that countries are moving away from the dollar, so sanctions are not going to work. They can't be bullied into doing something they don't really want to do, because they'll just use a different currency. Russia and China, they are gaining in strength. They're taking control of the Middle East, which we see happening right now. And the cabal, well, they're losing their strength in this entire area. There's no new U.S. forces headed into these areas to retake control. The people of these countries will start to take control. Peace will be negotiated, and the cabal, they won't be able to do anything at this point. Now, turning towards the Vegas shooting, it seems like the story keeps changing, and there's a lot of information that makes no sense whatsoever. Now they're saying, and this is coming from the Clark County Sheriff, Joe Lombardo, he altered the timeline. He's saying now Paddock shot a security guard, Jesus Campos, and the whole story keeps changing. The timeline keeps changing. Nothing's making sense anymore. And once again, this is what happens with propaganda. They need to continually change the story, because when people start pointing things out, people start to realize, well, that doesn't make any sense. And what they're going to continually do is they're going to continually change the story. And eventually what's going to happen is people aren't going to believe anymore. And a lot of people that I hear from are saying the whole thing doesn't even make sense. There are still people out there saying there's more than one shooter. Actually, people are saying that they heard gunfire on the ground, not even coming up from the window. Remember, the concert was very loud, and to be across the street, across the intersection, and to hear the gunfire 32 floors up, that is very, very difficult. And when you see the video, when you hear the video, it sounds like the gunshots are much, much closer than they really are. And this is because there's a lot of eyewitnesses out there saying, yeah, there was more than one shooter out there, and some were on the ground, some were on the fourth floor, some were in all different areas. And we can see at this point that the whole thing is one gigantic false flag. We've seen these before, and we've seen the patterns before. They're the same exact patterns over and over and over. And this is why we're able to catch on to what is really going on here. Now, once again, this is not going to be the end of the events, because the cabal right now, well, they're backed into a corner. Think about what's happening right now. The only thing they have left is really North Korea. Syria, unless they do something dramatic, the paid mercenaries there, it is lost. It looks like the funding for the Kurds, it's completely done. And it looks like no one's backing this fake referendum that occurred. The United States is not backing it. Russia's not backing it. China's not backing it. Iraq, Syria, no one's backing it. So there's going to be no independence there. They don't have the power anymore to split the Middle East. The Middle East is taking control of themselves right now. The only thing they have left is really North Korea, or maybe creating some type of an event here in the United States and blaming it on another group or another country. But even that, the clock is ticking down. And eventually what's going to happen is they're going to completely run out of time, and that's where they probably use the nuclear option. That's where they'll have the cyber attacks. That's where they'll have, things really go haywire. And it looks like we are definitely approaching that time frame. And we talked about this in depth in the past reports that we've done here, where everything has been set up. And the reason why they've been waiting and preparing is because that is the nuclear option. When all else fails, and they realize, and this is with the central banks also, they're going to be blamed for this economic collapse where the whole entire system comes down. The central banking system, they don't want to be blamed for this. The central banks, they can't take the blame. This is why they planted the malware. This is why everything's been set up. This is why they've been taking down the electrical grid in 2003 on the eastern seaboard. This was all a test. This didn't happen by accident. They've been planning this for quite a while. They've been fine-tuning everything. This is why they've been having the drills. Remember, every time they have these type of drills where they have which they hold every year, where the financial institutions get hit, the power grid gets hit, because they want to understand how everyone is going to react and what they need to do to cover it up. Now, I'm not saying the entire country is going to go lights out. They will have it in many, many different sections. They will hit the financial institutions to make it look really, really good. And we could see that most likely we're approaching that time frame, because they don't have that much left. They're being squeezed out slowly but surely. And they're losing their grip on the world. And they're just not going to disappear. They don't do that. They fight until the very end, and most likely they will use the nuclear option and basically hit the country, hit Europe, hit Canada, Australia with some type of worldwide cyber attack. And again, this will then bring us to war. Most likely, if they can pull this off, that's where they're trying to go with all of this. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.